My name is Thia Hennessy. I'm an economist with Teagasc, and today I'm speaking at the Weather Conference, and I'm talking about the economic impact of the recent weather crisis. Specifically, the types of things we're looking at is the impact that weather has had on feed usage on livestock farms. So we see very substantial increases over the 2012-2013 years in the order of 50 to 70%. We also see losses in output. Cows were dried off earlier. Annual milk production, national milk production fell by 5%. Significant number of animal deaths on beef and sheep farms, totaling about 20,000 additional animals dead in the year to date over a normal year. We're trying to put a figure on all of those costs within the farm sector, and we're coming up to somewhere close to about €500 million, about €500 million is the total cost of the recent weather crisis to the farming sector. We see that some regions of the countries were more adversely affected than others. For example, in the south and the southeast, the costs tend to have been higher than the west and the north. There's two reasons for this. First of all, the year-on-year weather impacts were worse in that part of the country, but also because of the production systems there. Farmers are used to a longer grazing period. They tend to use less purchased concentrate feed, and for this reason, the inclement weather had a more adverse impact on them. So the overall impact is interesting because when we think of a weather crisis, we tend to think of the negative impacts on input use. But of course, what happens is volume of food production across the world falls. So we see we've very high milk prices this year, the highest milk price on record. That's very much driven by the drought across America, the poor production conditions across Europe in the spring. So we have a very high milk price, and to a certain extent that will offset most of the negative impact of the fodder crisis in the current year. Dairy farm incomes will still be quite strong. On the livestock side, beef and sheep meat prices have tended to be falling, so the overall impact on income on those farms will still be negative. So the output price is falling as well as the input costs increasing, so a negative outcome for the 2013 year for livestock farms. So on the tillage side, where we see the impact of weather has really been on cereal yields, and they have been quite depressed over the last couple of years. But because this has been a phenomenon globally, cereal production has been depressed globally, and so prices have been somewhat higher. That offsets some of the negative impacts of the weather. However, all in all, it will be probably a negative outcome for tillage farmers for the current year in terms of income. And what we're seeing over the last 5 to 6 years on the tillage side is extreme volatility in prices, having a volatile impact on income as well, obviously. So in total, if we had to look at the impact of the weather over the last 2 years, we would say that the additional costs within the agricultural sector have been about €500 million. On the dairy side, most of this has been offset by good milk prices, so the impact on income will be quite minimal. However, on the beef and sheep side, the impact is likely to be negative, and on the tillage side, we're talking about more volatility in income again coming from weather patterns.